I'm going to talk about approach to traumatic glaucoma and cataract. So this is a very vast topic. In brief, I will be talking about the glaucoma and cataract uh, presentations and management. So the classification, when we classify trauma-related glaucoma, we can classify it into broadly into glaucoma that presents after closed globe injury, which is more common, and after open globe injury. So we have the blunt trauma. When closed globe injury occurs, there is compression of the globe in the anteroposterior direction, which elongates equatorially, which can result in shearing forces that can tear the structures like the lens iris diaphragm from its root. So the various injuries that can present uh, while a person has a blunt injury to the globe, it can be a sphincter tear, or a person can have angle recession, which is a split between the muscles of the ciliary body. There can be zonular dialysis, there can be iridodialysis, there can be cyclodialysis. There can be cataract formation in the lens or osseous string, that is pigmentary deposits over the anterior lens surface. There can be iridodonesis or phacodonesis, increased pigmentation in the angle, and various posterior segment manifestations, which already have been discussed. So the most common and early cause of glaucoma that presents to us is hyphia, along with hyphema. So hyphema occurs due to bleeding from small branches of the major arterial circle of the ciliary body and the iris, or sometimes from the iris surface. The mechanism of increased intraocular pressure is disruption of the trabecular meshwork or obstruction with the RBCs. It's important to note that if a person at presentation has hyphema, it's a very likely chance that that person will have angle recession in the long run. Also, it's very important to understand that clot formation and dissolution takes around 4 to 7 days. That is why immediate drainage of hyphema is not advised, because rebleed is a very common complication when we do not know when to treat and when to do hyphema drainage. And hyphema can be divided based upon how much it is filling up the anterior chamber. Supportive care is most important in hyphema management, especially elevating the head to 30 degrees. Lab tests should be done to rule out any bleeding or clotting disorders. It's important that NSAIDs should not be given, or any blood thinners should not be given. If a person is on blood thinners, a cardiologist should be consulted to stop the blood thinners for some time, so that the clotting can happen and the clot can retract in the anterior chamber. Cycloplegics and steroids should be given to quiet the eye. And paracentesis in surgery is only needed if there is intraocular pressure elevation of more than 50 millimeter of mercury for 5 days, or 35 millimeter of mercury for 7 days, or there is corneal blood staining or near total hyphema with 25 millimeter mercury pressure for more than 5 days, or there are stagnant clots which are persisting more than 10 days, or which are blocking the pupillary axis. Then another common cause of immediate rise of intraocular pressure after blunt trauma is usually anterior subluxation of the lens. Usually more than 25% of the zonular disruption is required to cause a pupillary block related glaucoma. The management of pupillary block in this case is actually not pilocarpine, but dilating the pupil and asking the patient to rest so that the lens can move backward. If not, YAG-PI might be done. In some cases, a lens subluxation, removal of the subluxated lens might have to be done. Sometimes there are micro trauma to the intraocular lens in aged people, which can lead to immediate formation of phacomorphic glaucoma, and cataract extraction is the definitive treatment of choice. Now, coming to a very common form of chronic glaucoma that happens after trauma is angle recession.
Sabrina, are you there? Yes, doctor.
Slides visible to you, because I think I cannot hear Dr. Talvir's voice.
Even I cannot hear Dr. Talvir. I think the
Okay.
system's got hanged.
Yes. So I think there is a problem. We'll just wait for 2 seconds if we can join back, or else we'll proceed with the next presentation.
Yes, doctor.
I'll just contact her if we can, if she's able to join back.
Okay, doctor.
Yes, yes. Hi, I'll share my screen again. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah, actually electricity just went off, so that is why it got disconnected.
That's okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So a chronic form of angle recession, angle closure glaucoma is the angle recession glaucoma, which happens due to tear between the longitudinal and circular muscles of the ciliary body. Am I audible, Dr. Pranita? Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
All right, thank you so much. The due to the intraocular pressure actually does not elevate due to the angle recession, but due to collateral damage and scarring of the trabecular meshwork that happens. It's very important to actually when the patient comes with acute rise in intraocular pressure due to angle recession, then aqueous suppressants are usually used. Pilocarpine and prostaglandins and laser, they have poor response. Pilocarpine may even cause a paradoxical rise in intraocular pressure. Trabeculectomy, if the intraocular pressure is not controlled on the anti-glaucoma medications, then trabeculectomy is actually the first line of surgical therapy. It's very important that if a person presents to you with angle recession but does not have ocular hypertension, you counsel the patient regarding risk of increase in intraocular pressure during a lifetime, especially if a person has more than 180 degree of angle recession. It has also been noted that 50% of people who have angle recession glaucoma in one eye may go on to develop open angle glaucoma in the contralateral eye. It was also noted that at presentation, if there is increased pigmentation in the angle, very high baseline IOP, large hyphema, lens displacement, or angle recession more than 180 degree, they have a risk of developing high intraocular pressure over time. Ghost cell glaucoma is not very common, but it usually happens after vitreous bleed and not after your hyphema. So it's important to note that the red blood cells that are regenerated in the vitreous move into the anterior chamber to block the trabecular meshwork. Surgical intervention is important in these cases. You can do a vitrectomy, but a trabeculectomy works almost good equal to the vitrectomy that can be done. Differential diagnosis of ghost cell glaucoma is hemosideretic and hemolytic glaucoma, which are way different. Hemosideretic is a very long-term glaucoma. Ghost cell glaucoma occurs after 1 month of the injury, while hemosideretic occurs after years after injury. And hemolytic glaucoma is due to red blood cell debris and macrophages that block the trabecular meshwork. So now open globe injuries can also cause trauma-related glaucoma, especially when there is a flat anterior chamber and lens particles are directly occluding the trabecular meshwork. Here, the surgical removal of the lens and suturing of the cornea and formation of anterior chamber as early as possible is very important. Epithelial downgrowth is a rare type of glaucoma. These are pictures of people having epithelial downgrowth, which is forming a cyst in one eye in penetrating keratoplasty patient in an open self-healed scleral perforation which can lead to epithelial downgrowth and glaucoma. The management is actually to remove these membranes from the anterior chamber, and usually these glaucomas have a very poor prognosis. Now coming to cataract management after trauma, cataract lens trauma can actually be due to decrease in clarity of the lens or due to disposition of the lens. We have already talked about the pupillary block glaucoma and pupillary block due to subluxation of the lens. The lens can also subluxate posteriorly. There can be stellate cataracts, or there can be subluxation which can be seen over the slit lamp very easily. Sometimes a partially absorbed cataract is present, which might have posterior capsular tear, which can be easily picked up on ultrasound, UBM or ultrasound. It's important to evaluate to look for any posterior capsular tears or any foreign body in the eye. Any foreign body in the eye warrants immediate removal of the lens. So primary cataract removal, we have already talked about that it should be done when lens matter is actually blocking the AC, when it is swollen or giving rise to pupillary block, or there is some posterior segment manifestation. Secondary versus primary cataract removal has also been talked about by Dr. Siddhi. A recent article says that
Doctor, sorry to interrupt you, but the
this
timer is up.
Yes, it's just 1 or 2 slides and I'll be so early versus late traumatic cataract surgery, intraocular implantation, there is no difference between the visual acuity and the complications. Surgical planning has already been discussed, and it's important to just note that in subluxated cataract lenses, it's important that the management is done according to the number of subluxation glaucars that are present. Also, when you prognosticate the traumatic cataract patients, the ocular trauma score has a very high sensitivity and specificity to visually prognosticate the traumatic cataract. Thank you so much.